In this video, I'll give you my final picks in Draftkings Strategy for UFC Vegas 99. As always, you can call me Kunith. Let's make some money this week. We'll start with value plays. These are going to be plays that you want to plug into your Draftkings lineups that are 8,000 and below, essentially underdogs you need to make everything work salary-wise. But before we get into that, if you haven't already, go back and watch the predictions video from earlier in the week. It's a full card breakdown. We get through it as efficiently as anybody in the game. Go check it out. As for the value plays this week, let me tell you something, Junior. We are starving like Marvin trying to get some value on this slate because it looks very favorite heavy. It looks like a chalky slate. Now, of course, just because we have somebody in value play consideration doesn't mean that that's our prediction to win. That's not the person we think is going to win all the time. That's not a person who we think is going to score a whole lot of points more often than not, but you're attacking upside, you're playing the leverage game, and you just want some exposure if you're running multiple lineups. And I have changed my mind on one of these fights throughout the week, and it's actually this fight right here and our first value play. So Darren Elkins, the damage, I talked about him in the predictions video. I made my prediction. I said that Darren Elkins was going to win this fight by decision. But I'm telling you right now, publicly, there's way too much love on Darren Elkins this week, and that's turning me off to him because I don't know why everybody thinks the same on this one. I don't know why Darren Elkins is everybody's darling. Like, I get that Daniel Pineda's got bad cardio and what have you, but I also feel like there's a situation where we can see Darren Elkins just get knocked out. When you start looking at his last handful of fights, he was on a 4-fight losing streak. Then he fought a guy who had no success in the UFC, got cut from the promotion. Derek Minner, the fight fixer, who has no cardio outside of the first round, he melts him, he chokes him out, or knocks him out, in the second round. It happens. So these two wins right here, they're largely meaningless. Then you look at the fight against Cub Swanson, Cub knocks him out quickly in the first round, and I think that Daniel Pineda could do the same thing. Tristan Connolly, not very good, and actually put together a pretty competitive fight in this one. Darren Elkins was favored to win. Tristan Connolly, I believe, no longer in the UFC. JSP on a 3-fight losing streak. TJ Brown, probably not long for the UFC if he is in the promotion anymore. But you're going to want Darren Elkins in value play consideration for the reasons that we listed in the predictions video, right? He has that crazy cardio. He's known for the durability. Daniel Pineda's lost every decision that he's been matched with in his career. And if Darren Elkins wins, he's probably posting a decent enough DraftKings score. So somebody you want exposure to, if you're running, say, 150 lineups, you're going to want maybe 30% Darren Elkins. You're probably going to find yourself underweight to the field there, which I think is the sweet spot. So again, while I've changed my mind on the pick, I do think that Darren Elkins, somebody you have to have in value play consideration. The next value play that we're looking at is Michel Pereira. Michel Pereira sitting at the top of the slate, 7,900. If he wins, he's optimal. He's that late hammer that you want. He probably wins inside the distance if it gets it done this week. You can expect him to be highly owned this week, but he is somebody you have to have in value play consideration. And if it sounds like I don't want to plug these guys in, it's because I don't. Like, I don't think that they're going to win, but we're playing the game. This is part of the game. The game is figuring out who can score us points, who has a path to victory, who has a chance. Now, somebody who is probably going to be the most owned player on the slate, or at least he should be. He certainly will be the highest owned fighter when you're playing in single entry contests this week, is Jake Hadley at 7,700. When you look at the betting odds versus the salary, you don't often get situations like this. Jake Hadley coming in at 7,700, but almost minus 500 on the betting line, gets a guy who's making his UFC debut. Super short notice call. Jake Hadley makes weight. He's on point. He's on weight for this one, unlike last time where he stepped in on short notice and missed weight. Jake Hadley has finishing upside. We've seen him finish 2 of his opponents in the UFC. If he gets the fight to the ground, he's a problem, but somebody you just want to plug in because, I mean, if you saw a guy at minus 470, minus 500, you would think he's a free square, and most of the time you'd probably find himself right here at the 9,400-ish range, if not more. So Jake Hadley, the best play on the slate, a must play in your single entry contests. Again, he's probably going to be, I'm not exaggerating here, let's say you're playing in a contest with about 200 people, he's probably going to be around 70% owned and more than likely well worth it. You'll see that number come down a bit with the bigger contests like the 500K to first or whatever the case is, but in the smaller field, he's going to be owned, but you don't want to miss the boat. Jake Hadley's a must play in my opinion. Hit that button. And then as we go through, I'm not really loving it. So we already passed Ardelean, not interested. Jessica Penne, not interested. Nicolau, I would be interested in other spots, but I'm very high on Almabayev. Sumudaerji, no thank you. Tamires Vidal, I don't think she's a UFC fighter. I really don't. And she's fighting Joselyne Edwards, who's going to be massive in this fight. She weighed in at 139 pounds, which basically means she's going to be the Terminator in there because it's an adverse relationship. It's the negative correlation or whatever you want to call it. On the surface, you might think, oh, somebody missed weight. Maybe they're underprepared. Maybe the gas tank's not going to be there. Maybe this, maybe that. When somebody misses weight, it just means that they didn't feel like cutting the weight and they're probably going to feel better in there on fight night. So she's probably going to kick the crap out of Tamires Vidal. I would not be surprised if she lit it up as well. Now, if there's an underlying medical reason that gets her pulled from the card tomorrow night and you roster her, it's not going to feel good. But I'm telling you now, with the women's MMA, like nature of women's MMA already being low owned, her missing weight, the matchup, I don't think people are going to be on Joselyne Edwards, and if she wants to make it up to the company, at least go out there and put on a show. And we saw Tamires Vidal kind of quit last time against Melissa Gatto. She realized that she was behind, wasn't going to be able to fight her way back, ends up getting kicked in the chest. I don't know what that feels like. I don't have the same equipment. I'm sure it didn't feel great, but you know what? I don't think that she was trying to find a way to fight back into that one. She's like, I'm good. Brad Katona, somebody I wanted to take as an underdog this week. You look at Brad Katona's last 2 fights, 3 takedowns there, 4 takedowns there. Since returning to the UFC, he's had 3 fights. That fight against Cody Gibson, he let his hands go, 173 significant strikes. And both these fights, you know, these are recent fights. And if you go 1 fight further back, this is when he won the Ultimate Fighter for the 2nd time. He landed 160 significant strikes over 15 minutes. It's pretty damn good. Scored you 97 DraftKings points at 8,500 that night. Probably got you there. Somebody who's typically favored as well. So I think Brad Katona is somebody you want in value play consideration. Not somebody I'm dying to play because I think Matsumoto's probably got him covered. But Brad Katona is going to be looking for those takedowns. We've seen Matsumoto give up takedowns before. So we'll build some lineups. I'll show you how I think we should be approaching it this week. But I'm telling you now, if there was ever a week that you wanted to just pass on DFS, it would be this week because the chances of you solo shipping very, very low. The bigger the contest, the less likely that happens, but I wouldn't be surprised to see people in like the $100 or $200 single entry contests end up chopping their prize. And in the big contest, 150 max entries, 500K to first, that's going to get chopped up so many times that people are going to be like, oh, I'm glad I have my chicken Big Mac money. It's a pretty frustrating slate overall. You'll have a lot more fun just straight betting on this. If you can't in the state that you live in, just move. But from a DFS perspective, I'll show you real quick what I think we should do as far as cash game lineups and then what tournament lineups should look like. But real quick, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. You know how the algorithm works. You know, when you're building your cash game lineups, I do think you roll the dice by stacking the main event this week. Come down here, grab Pineda. You've got Hernandez on the other side. Guaranteed winner at the top. If this is a war, if one of them ends up winning, say in the 3rd or 4th round, you probably have a decent score. I could see a situation where Fluffy Hernandez goes out there, scores 130 DraftKings points. We see another 50 from Michel Pereira. They score 180 between the 2 of them. That's like having 2 fighters that score around 90 points. That's not bad. Jake Hadley, a staple this week, and he opens up the ability for you to do whatever you want because the benefit of something like this is you have an underdog who probably goes out there and wins. You have a guaranteed winner up here, and you can play any of these favorites and not really go wrong. So let's say, for example, you wanted to go with Melissa Martinez, you wanted to go with Elise Reed. You can come all the way up here, grab Jan Matsumoto, you can grab Charles Johnson, Almabayev. I'm fine with that, and that's really the cash game formula this week. It's going to be hard to get up to like a Robelis Despaigne, for example. And if you wanted to do that in cash, then you're probably sacrificing stacking the main event, but then at that point, it becomes more of like a tournament lineup, which we'll start building now, and I'll give you a couple of looks. And if you want some tools to help you with DFS this week or really any week, you can visit kunithmma.com where you can get a lineup optimizer at a cheaper price than probably anywhere you're going to find. You'll also have access to the community forum where we put our parlays for the week. Last week, the best parlay hit at plus 2,600 or greater than plus 2,600, so we smashed it. Official betting article, DFS strategy guide, lineup optimizer, data model, projections, all that good stuff could be found on kunithmma.com. That's linked linked in the description and in a pinned comment. Back to the breakdown. So with your tournament lineups this week, I suggest playing a Robelis Despaigne because he's probably going to go out there. He's probably going to pick up a first round knockout. Wouldn't be surprised if he got another quick win finish as well, like he did in his UFC debut. Austen Lane's only hope is to shoot for a really fast takedown, but I don't think that he gets the time and space to do it. I think Robelis Despaigne just comes out swinging, knocks him out early. Somebody who's probably going to come in like 55 to 60% owned in most contests. So if you want to fade him, if you want to take that risk, be my guest. I'm all about zigging where the others zag, but at this point, if I were building this lineup, I'd come here to Jake Hadley, 7,700. Thank you very much. 82.25 left over per fighter. I do like Daniel Pineda quite a bit this week. I'm in a position now where I have to take another underdog, so I'm going to get cheap here with Brad Katona. Give me Fluffy at 8,300, and now with 9,200, I could afford almost everybody. I can't afford Kyler Phillips. I don't really want to afford Kyler Phillips. He looked good last time out, but not really somebody I'm dying to play on DraftKings this week because, I mean, throughout his entire UFC tenure has yet to break 100 DraftKings points. Rob Font is as durable as they come. In a 3-round fight, good luck finishing Rob Font. Not too interested. So at this point, you can grab anybody else. If we just start looking at the average scores of these guys, Jan Matsumoto put up a good score in his UFC debut despite that heavy wrestling pace against Dan Argueta, so he's somebody who needs to be in consideration. Asu Almabayev has been free real estate since he burst onto the scene. You want to plug them into your lineups. You left 500 salary on the table. I don't mind this at all. If we blow this up, we want to start again. We're going to come down here to our staple, and I'm not giving you too many this week because there aren't too many to give you. Again, if there were ever a week to skip, 11 fights, chalk zone, not interested. But when we look at who's left, if you really wanted to get different, you could target some of the women's MMA. I don't mind playing Elise Reed, for example. I think Elise Reed comes in at really low ownership. She's yet to do anything, but I think she has the dance partner where she can really look good against her, maybe find herself getting a knockout win. Melissa Martinez, I'm really not interested. And you guys know I do vouch for women's MMA when it comes to daily fantasy sports. I think it's just hidden gold, and people just tend to overlook it. They feel like, oh, it always goes the distance, it always this, it always that, which, I mean, a lot of these fights nowadays, since the glove change, are going the distance, but a lot of the women's MMA fights, sometimes they just end up being one-way traffic. I think that Joselyne Edwards affords you that one-way traffic. The reason why I say that is because I think she could get takedowns here. I think that she can end up in a dominant position. I think she knows she needs to finish the fight. The problem with Joselyne Edwards is sometimes when you watch her, you feel like she's not doing anything. That's really concerning, but somebody who's going to come in at really, really low ownership is Joselyne Edwards. And I think just plugging her into your lineup alone makes you different enough. So even if you wanted to grab like chalky pieces like an Elkins, like a Pereira, 87.50 left over per fighter. You can grab Almabayev. I think that Charles Johnson's going to get a little bit of love. Nothing too crazy, but I do think that people will get here. But that's another way you can approach this. If we blow this up, I'm going to come down here, grab my Jake Hadley. I like Almabayev again. I'm going to come here and grab Fluffy over 5 rounds. Elise Reed, we might just take a shot on her, see what happens. Pineda, 8,200. We've got 8,500 left over per fighter. I might just plug in Brady Heastan because nobody else is giving me points. No, I'm just kidding. So if we take him out, if I found myself in this position, I probably would end up just going here to Melissa Martinez. Or if you really want to break some ankles, say you're playing single entry contests, for example, and some people are going to do this, but not a ton, right? So this is a good way for you to get different and also give yourself access to that high scoring ceiling. We kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Despaine's going to get his points. We know that, but Kyler Phillips could easily score 75. We could see Jan Matsumoto score 85. Brad Katona gets some takedowns, wins some minutes, maybe wins a round. Jan Matsumoto wins by decision. Brad Katona notoriously difficult to get out of there. Joselyne Edwards can go out there and just stand there like a statue, as she normally does, and score 70 DraftKings points. We've seen Charles Johnson go out there, throw a ton of strikes, but get no takedowns, no knockdowns, and only score around 80-something points. So far, the top 5 most expensive fighters on the slate outside of Despaigne, you could see a situation where these guys don't score that well. You know Almabayev's going to score well if he wins. That's just what he does. He gets takedowns. He's on top of you. He's looking to submit you. He's on your back. He's racking up minutes of control time. Matheus Nicolau's got to make something happen. So we know that Almabayev and Despaigne are going to get their points. So you plug them in. You plug Almabayev in. We've seen Elise Reed go out there, just not do much, right? Her last win, she scored 62 DraftKings points. We've seen people lose 3-round fights and score that much, right? Melissa Martinez could go out there, Let's say she scores 75 points. Fluffy Hernandez, he's somebody who could score you a lot of points. Daniel Pineda or Darren Elkins, one of them could score you a lot of points. Let's say you wanted to go with Darren Elkins. You start looking through the game log. Darren Elkins has lit it up in decision wins. And then you come down here, you're trying to look for a value play. Well, you're going to want to plug Jake Hadley in there. And now you have 7,900 left over. This lands you right at Michel Pereira, who is probably a higher scorer in a decision loss than any of these fighters down here. This is a chalky lineup, but it's one that can get you there. Now, if you wanted to tweak it just a little bit to get a little bit different and maybe have access to some more scoring upside, what you might want to do is come off of Darren Elkins, you plug in Daniel Pineda. Yeah, it says you left minus 200 salary on the table, so you're over, but just send them an email and they'll let you push this lineup through. No, I kid. So now what do? How do you change this up a little bit? How do you get a little bit more upside out of this? Well, you might have to sacrifice Robelis Despaigne. And you might have to play Matsumoto and hope and pray that he gets you there. Again, it's kind of tough sledding for me as a creator to try to get different with these lineups that I'm showing you, but the point of me going through all of what I just went through is to say that if you wanted to stack the main event in that situation that we described before, where say Fluffy gets 135 DraftKings points, we see 45 even from Michel Pereira. That's 180 DraftKings points, the equivalent of 2 fighters scoring 90 points, which is probably better than what we're going to see out of Martinez, Reed, Charles Johnson, Joselyne Edwards, Kyler Phillips. So now that I'm kind of working through this with you in real time, I do think that that's probably the recipe this week on a card that is so starved for underdogs, unless Tamires Vidal wins or something like that. Stacking the main event in tournaments might just end up being optimal if those 2 guys go to war. And we know those are 2 guys that are built for war. Michel Pereira, super durable, probably doesn't give up on himself. He's only really gassed out once, and we saw why he did that. He hasn't made that mistake since. Although, to be fair, Santiago Ponzinibbio took the last round off of him, but Fluffy Hernandez, we've seen him take big shots. We saw him eat Edmund Shabazian's best shots early on. Say what you want about Edmund Shabazian, what his record looks like, but that first 3 minutes from Edmund Shabazian is hell. We saw him take Roman Kopylov's best shots. Roman Kopylov, quietly, one of the best strikers in the division. So if those 2 guys go to war, they're having success at different points. Michel Pereira's touching him up, landing a lot of strikes. Fluffy's getting his takedowns. Michel's bouncing back up to his feet. They could combine for around, say, 175 to 190 DraftKings points, and that probably gets you there this week. So just keep an eye out for that. I think that's where we land. I think that's what's going to happen. I think the optimal lineup actually has a stacked fight in it, which is not common, but it's not impossible. We've seen it a handful of times over the last 12 to 18 months. It's kind of tough to make this lineup and know that you don't have Robelis Despaigne in there just because of his scoring upside. So if you had to make an adjustment, we can try again to try to fit this in, but then you're just forced to play Darren Elkins. Now, if Darren Elkins, if everybody's darling wins this week, which would not be shocking, then you're in a great spot. That there would be the optimal lineup. This would be the optimal lineup. I'm telling you now. But if Darren Elkins doesn't win, that's where things can get a bit dicey, because Pineda's not going to win a decision. He's going to win inside the distance. So that's when you would just make a slight adjustment. Now, if you want to break some ankles, that's where you go to Joselyne Edwards and hope her big ass can stay on top of Vidal for all 3 rounds. But that'll do it for final picks. A little bit different, a little weird, not the easiest slate to break down just because we're hungry. I feel like Oliver Twist looking for the value. Please, so can I have some value? Value? That's what's in the script now, Oscar? Oliver Twist. All right, you're going to be Oscar Twist in a minute. But that'll do it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment something for the algorithm. I'll see you for the big old pay-per-view next week. Let's go.